Okay, so let's get started and let's take a look at Twitter first. Why? Because Twitter's probably the most controversial of all of them. Think to yourself right now, do you think Twitter is just a complete waste of time? If you do, you're not alone. A lot of people feel that way. And there's a lot of studies that are being done on Twitter these days because it's a new phenomena. Twitter's a new phenomena, so there's a lot of studies being done. And this is just one of those studies that I'm referring to. But they took a look at about 500,000 tweets. And of those 500,000 tweets, they categorized 40% of them as pointless babble. Pointless babble is what they called it. So the people, of course, who hate Twitter, they look at a study like that and they say, this is exactly why I don't want to be on Twitter. I look at the same study and say, that's why I do want to be on Twitter. Because everyone's saying this stupid garbage like I'm going to go get a taco. Right? This is the stuff that's being shared on Twitter is absolute garbage. And in the same study, one of the characteristics that they found was fascinating. Less than 10% of the tweets, in fact, it was 8.7% of the tweets, had what they refer to as pass-along value. Pass-along value. Less than 10% of the tweets were good enough that people shared it with their friends. That's what we're after, remember? We want people to share it with their friends. Less than 10% of those tweets were good enough that people shared it with their friends. Guys, it's not hard to shine in this audience, okay? It's a pretty low bar. There's an opportunity on Twitter. So when I released my book back in 2009, I summarized the book into 300 marketing tips. And I released those tips as tweets on Twitter. There were all kinds of them. They were just short little, of course, Twitter is restricted to 140 characters, so you can't say that much. But I had ones that said things like, and we talked about this earlier, conversations are markets. Participation plus facilitation equals opportunity. More tips at, and a link to my website, a link to my blog. Right? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to introduce myself on the raging river called Twitter. And if people don't care what I'm saying, that's okay. It's okay. I don't mind. But if they do, they have a way to click through and learn more about what I'm doing. You could write 200 tips. I don't know who you are, but I'm convinced it's true. 200, 300, 400 tips. You could do it in a weekend. And when I did it, I uploaded all those tweets to an automated platform. I did it in one afternoon. Now, it was an awful afternoon, right? But I got them all uploaded and I scheduled them to go out once a day automatically to Twitter for 300 days, and then it would repeat and start over again. You could create 200 or 300 tips and start providing value on Twitter in a weekend. You know, there's a lot of great success stories on Twitter and a lot of fun stories, but one of my favorites is JetBlue, the airline JetBlue. Think about what they did. They have a staff of people who are on Twitter every day searching for people who are tweeting the word Southwest. Southwest. They're a competitor. And in particular, they're looking for people who are saying not so nice things about their competitor. Think about the opportunity that it affords them. They can reply to these people in real time. These are people who need what they're selling at the precise moment that they're pissed off with the competition. That's like borderline evil to me. But it's a spectacular use of Twitter and it's brilliant. So like I do in so many cases, I borrow these ideas from success stories that I find and I use them myself with people who I've worked with. And I worked with a lady who has a very, very small flower store. It's a very small flower store. And we created a local Twitter audience for her, which is easy to do. And she has an alert system set up where she gets an email every morning with a daily digest of the people in her audience who tweeted the word congratulations, baby, wedding, and a variety of other, probably a half a dozen other words. And where appropriate, she replies to those people and says, congratulations from us as well. Come on in and get a free flower. Most people don't do it, but some do. And more than half buy something when they're there. Does that make sense? She's using the waste of time Twitter to find new clients every day. So I do conferences all over the world. That's what I do. And I did a conference recently for a series of a whole bunch of insurance people who was down in Palm Springs. So I did some research in anticipation of that conference. See, you got to think to yourself, what words could you search for? Just go to search.twitter.com. Search replaces the www of a traditional website address. Search.twitter.com. On that website, you can search for any words you like. And by the way, you can reply to somebody on Twitter, anybody on Twitter, whether you're following them or they're following you or not. It's not restricted in that way. You can send a reply to anyone you want. So I did some research in anticipation of this conference in Palm Springs, and I searched for the phrase, I need new insurance. I need new insurance. Now, that in itself is important. Don't just search for your keywords, like insurance, because if you do that, you're going to find your competitors. Think about a phrase that your customers might be saying. What would they this is a conversation. People on Twitter are talking to each other. What would someone be saying? So I searched for I need new insurance, and you wouldn't believe what came up. It was actually in the first page of results. Every page shows 20 tweets that have the words that I searched for. And there were literally tweets that said, I need new insurance, suggestions welcome, or please help, or any suggestions on where to start my search. I couldn't believe it. It was almost like it was a joke. And those insurance people could reply with something like, I saw your tweet about insurance. That's what we do. Here's a free PDF report with some answers. Now let's go on that for 1 second. Step number 1, internet marketing. Step number 1, this is important. Create yourself a juicy, sexy, awesome PDF report that you can give away for free. It's important. Okay, if you're going to be soliciting people who don't know who you are, if you're going to be approaching prospects who don't know who you are, it's a lot easier to make that introduction if you're giving them some value first and not just pitching. That's what people hate. I hate it, and you hate that too. So create yourself a it's not a sales pitch. Create yourself a value-added PDF report. 5 pages, 10 pages, 15 pages. It can have a call to action telling them to call you for a consultation or whatever you want to do, but it should be a value. The 7 biggest mistakes people make when they do whatever it is you do for a living. The 5 questions you must ask before you do whatever it is you do. Create yourself a PDF report. The example I just gave with these insurance people is one way you can use that PDF report, but there are countless other examples of other things that you can do as well. Now let's look at one more case history on Twitter, and then we'll move on. And this is another great example. It's an example of a pizza place that's located in New Orleans. It's called Naked Pizza, which is a great name. And they embraced Twitter. They put a big sign in front of their store. You can see pictures of it online, and they created a Twitter profile for themselves. And they offered, this is the important part, they offered an incentive, 10% discount if you tweet your orders in. Okay, 68% of their orders are tweeted in. Why? Of course, the obvious answer is they get a discount. But again, think one step past that. For myself, I have about 25,000 followers on Twitter. If I tweet my order in, my entire network is notified that I just ordered pizza from Naked Pizza. The viral element is baked in. It's guaranteed. How can you incentivize your existing customers to communicate with you over the social channel? Right now, they call you. That's private. Nobody finds out about it. They send you an email. That's private. They communicate with you on Twitter. Their network is notified. If they communicate with you on Facebook, their network is notified. The social channel is very, very powerful. How can you get people to communicate with you over the social channel? In the case of Naked Pizza, 85% of their new customers came through Twitter. So they gave a 10% discount. Who cares? They built their entire business using this particular campaign. Think creatively about how you can use Twitter. Twitter is a huge conversation, and the opportunity on Twitter is to participate in that conversation.